experience with your
We're
journey.
live. It goes live so fast.
So fast that I was in the middle of saying something.
Welcome to the Dance to Oneness podcast. My name is Amy Shine and I'm your host. And this is our sixth episode of the Dance to Oneness podcast. And today I have a very good friend of mine, Sue Cotter, with me. She's coming live all the way from Ireland, County Cork, Ireland. She's up in the mountains somewhere. What we'd say in Ireland, back arse of nowhere. She's living in the back arse of nowhere. And Sue is a really good friend of mine. We met many years ago at Access class, foundation class, and we found out very early on we had lots of interests in common. We were both really into all sorts of things like angel cards you were talking about before we got on the show, and Reiki and yoga and meditation and eating. Our main, I'd have to say our main similar connection point was the food. We're both obsessed with healthy food, finding out what is in food and eating the right food and eating the kale to create the fiber and all that stuff. We were very funny. So we've gone back a long way, and today I wanted to get Sue on the show, and I'm sure I'm going to have you on lots. And today we were veering towards talking about anxiety, as it's something we've both kind of dealt with a lot, and I think we've both actually facilitated each other a lot around it too.
Totally.
So welcome, Sue.
Thank you. It's so great to be on here, and congratulations on your amazing podcast. I'm like, when I saw it come out, I was like, oh my God, the Dance to Oneness? That's just like so amazing. It reminds me of like clouds dancing in the sky. It's just so magical, and I love that you actually created this. I've known you for maybe 8 years now, 7 years maybe. And from the day I met you, it has always been about the movement, the dance, allowing your body to, like just let go. And that's the energy. And I was like, I remember when I met you, I was like, oh, I don't dance like the way she dances. And I remember you saying to me, I just dance. There's no form to it. I just dance. I just move. I just do whatever shows up. And then I got to witness you do it. And I was like, wow, she's got her own tribe going on there.
Yeah. Me and my tribe just dance wherever, whenever.
Yeah. And you also introduced me to dance. Because when you met me first, if you remember that, I was really rigid in my body, and I definitely didn't have that confidence in myself to actually step out and dance. I had this like structured dance of how I would dance, and it used to actually hurt my body to dance like that, because I would be so tight and contracted. And then when I started to dance with you, you had like this, like it was like you were dancing since you came onto the earth, and it was like, what? Just dance, just move your body. And I was like, okay. And I'd start to move, and then I was like, she's not even looking at me, she's not judging me. And then that was a lot more ease for me. So thanks for that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I never really got the judgment with the dance. It didn't really make sense to me. Like I used to judge myself, because I remember trying to go to going to hip hop classes and salsa and all that, like in my early 20s, because I like realized I loved dance, and I realized that, well, actually, talking about like anxiety and mental illness and all that, like I battled so much with like the thoughts in my head and the crazy mind and the racing thoughts and the constant like heart palpitations and anxiety, that movement was a way for me to like to kind of like melt a lot of that. And when I tried to do like salsa, I remember trying to learn salsa, and I remember trying to learn like hip hop and going to like classes where they teach you the routine, and then you have to like do the routine the way the teacher did it. Oh my God, like you said, it ended up hurting me. Like I ended up coming out with a headache, like in my head, and then judging myself that I couldn't do it. And then I would go into a spiral. I'd go, oh my God, you're not doing it properly. Oh my God, you're so stupid. Oh my God, you're so slow. You can't remember the moves. Everyone else can do it. You can't do it. And it was just this cycle of judgment. So I'd end up leaving feeling like shit, judging myself. And it was really only when, when I was at home and I just started to put my music on and put my headphones on, and it was a way for me to kind of release and just like let go of like all, and also like move my emotions. Like it was a way of me moving all this stuff I was feeling all the time. And all the, craziness that was going on, I was able to move it and then actually have a sense of space and kind of like relaxation. And so because I started at home, I had nobody watching me. And I wasn't trying to perform for anyone. So it was never a performance. And it became more like a movement and energy. And then I just went from there to finding movement classes that weren't structured, But that really was my first therapy, like the movement.
Absolutely. But I love what you say. It was like, the just to like let go or, dissipate that energy of, overload, or that energy of all those thoughts. And like for me now, I mean, if I dance, which the other morning, like I get up now and I have my earphones, like my little pods next to me, and I'll just hit my Spotify and I have this like playlist and I'll put them on, and I'm on with the shorts, on with the top, no matter what the weather is, and I'm out the garden and I'll dance to about 7 songs. And like that just changes like that. Even within the first like, I don't know, the first couple of bars of the song, I'm just like boom, I'm in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when you move your body like that, I mean, when I met you first, I would have been doing a lot of weightlifting, I would have been doing a lot of movement in the gym, and a lot of breathing with that as well. So it was kind of like yoga with weights. And so that was my kind of go-to, was I would train at 6 o'clock in the morning, dissipate that energy. But there was always like it would leave for a little bit and then it would start coming back in. So for me,
So what would be the,
Hmm?
like you talking about anxiety or overwhelm or?
Well, it was totally the overwhelm. It was always overwhelm. It was always like so many thoughts in on top of each other. Like sometimes I used to actually like have this thing where I used to feel like my here or behind here or like at the side, I used to feel like there was like it was going to explode. There was so much like I used to feel like electricity. Like shocks, like that energy, and it was really intense for me. As I said, I used to go to the gym and then I would like dissipate it and I'd come out feeling like, oh my god, great, and it would be gone. And then it would show back up again and I would have that like, that nausea thing on my tummy, and I had no information on that. No information on that sicky feeling in the tummy. um Not really wanting to go out, not really wanting to interact with people, because I felt it would heighten more if I started to have a conversation. I wouldn't be able to use my speech would get kind of like shaky, and my breath was really like I was cough for breath, and the heartbeat. So it was all of that stuff, and really, I would say, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Go
Well, I
ahead.
was going to ask you, like, did you always have that? Like, when did that start?
Oh, I remember it starting maybe when I was 16, 17, like in around the, actually, it was way before that. It was way before that, maybe 9 or 10. It was around that when I was younger. Um, I just had this like, it was, do you know what? It was very much like I was waiting for the next trauma to happen and
Mm.
I was ready. But this was my body's way of like, like sensing. And it was like these sensations, and I would be like, okay, get ready. There's something going to happen, you know? So I was living with like on that edge all the time. Um, and as I said, when I found like the gym and started to move my body, and then as well, I started to eat foods. I was introduced to like foods like really good fats, which are like super for me, like, fish oils and stuff like that. And that started to work with that came with, training, because it's very hard to train when you are eating foods that are very, maybe processed,
Yeah.
very high in sugar, or anything that was kind of going to make you like maybe less energetic. And I found that when I changed my food, it definitely improved. But I always felt that there was something else that I required. And then I went on to find more things,
Yeah.
that like, the universe is like hearing you all the time. And I remember actually praying for this to leave. So I was like, oh, please, like just leave. And then sure enough, things would start showing up. Like then I moved on and started, getting Reiki sessions. And then I became a practitioner in Reiki. And that worked for, and then there was like, okay, I want more. There's more, there's something else,
And in that
and I met you.
journey, like, so I mean, obviously you didn't just go, you were like not around 8 or 9 and that all that, like what would this reality would call anxiety if we want to put a label on it, and I'm sure like you said, it showed up differently. Sometimes it was like just being on edge. Other times it was racing mind, racing thoughts. Other times it was like heart palpitations, like that feeling of overwhelm. But like, obviously like from 9 to like whatever your mid 30s, it's not like that every single day. It changes, and obviously sometimes you have periods where you're better and other times you don't. But like, just to show people, like I like to show people the progression, because obviously you didn't just go from 9 and then suddenly like
No.
start working out at the gym. So like, what were you like maybe in your teenage years or your like young early 20s or whatever, before, I suppose before you got married, right? I suppose
Mm-hmm.
when you got married and have kids, things change a lot. But before you got married, how were you dealing with it then? Were
It
you working out
was
then, or
very
were you?
much, no, 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 no. It was very much like, I know, yeah. It was very much like, when I was like in my teens, it was like I was really, I learned to deal with it, but like not really dealing with it. I just coped with it.
Coped with it?
And
Yeah.
it was like I would use things to distract me, you
Boy,
know. So it would be like a boy, or
alcohol.
like alcohol. Well, I haven't gotten to that one yet, right? Because I kind of didn't drink till I was about maybe 17, I think.
Oh, really?
Alcohol,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah,
was 14.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think I tasted it first around then, and then I was like, no,
You were a city girl. Like, you should have been way worse than me.
Yeah, city girl, I know. But you know what? I was actually afraid. And I had this thing going on all the time. I was afraid of my own shadow. I was like I would jump all the time. And like sometimes I would look behind, there'd be no one there. And I'd be still jumping. So for me, like through my teens, it was really, I was just looking for the next distraction to take me away from this. So then like, when I started working and earning money, then I started going to the pub on a Friday night and a Saturday night and maybe a Sunday night. And then I would have like, some alcohol, and I would be fine. It would be, it would be just like forgotten about. It was another distraction. But the following morning, oh my God, like, I mean, it was like tenfold, more and more and more. And then I got married. I still had it going on. I was always like trying to control everything. So control was a huge distractor for me. I would control everything to make sure that I was prepared in case anything did happen. So I was living on that edge thing all of the time, waiting for something else. And then I had my first child. So then, like, I was full in on my first child, and also huge anxiety there as well in case I would F up, or I would, screw things up, or I would do something wrong. And so I was anxious about that. And I remember when I had my first child, like I used to sleep a lot because I would be thinking about the following day and how I would prep everything. And I'd have most of my stuff prepped, but I would be thinking about the following day, how I would prep everything. So it was just like, it was like living in the future all the time, but also
Yeah.
from the past, which really I was not present at all, like in the present at all, you know? So then it just, I suppose I had my second child, and then that's when I really realized that things started to become, I knew there had to be something else. I knew I wasn't just here to live, like, how would I put
In
it? Like
survival, like.
survival, exactly. I knew there was something else. And also my kids actually showed me they were looking for something else. They were like energetically like, and I didn't even know back then, but I did know something because energetically I knew they were looking for me to choose something else to show them.
Wow.
And I knew that. And I used to actually make me cry, even thinking about that. I was like, here's these two kids, they're here, you're their mother. Like, there has to be something else. This is not what you're going to show them for the rest of their lives.
And that's when you started to find like things like Reiki,
Yeah.
and you started to find like, well, I mean, I think you started first with the gym, right? And the working out and the weight training and the breathing. And that's when you started to get more connected with your body. Because I mean, whatever
Yeah.
you're doing, you know, for anyone who's watching, like whatever you're doing, like if you do something, whatever it's weight training, yoga, like dancing, anything that includes the breath, where you're actually using your breath and getting you present in your body, that is transformational. That will start waking you up and start moving some energies in your life, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even the gym that I was attending, it was actually private one-to-ones. It was these two people that had trained they had trained in some special yoga and with weights. So that was my first experience of lifting weights. And I actually count myself really lucky that I had that experience. And it was one-to-one, and it was very much yoga, and also like using tools with psychotherapy while I was lifting weights with this person.
Wow. So
So
you're actually being facilitated while you lift weights. That is so cool.
totally. So she opened the doors, and then she started to say things to me like, what would you like? What would you like? And I remember one day being on a machine with her, and she was standing next to me, and she was like, like she asked me, had I watched a lot of films, movies with, like, we'd say endings that were happy. And I remember looking at her going, no. And she was like, okay. So she said, try a couple, try and watch some movies that have an ending that's happy. And I did. And that changed a lot for me as well, because in my life then, as I said, I was always waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I was waiting for the next trauma. I was waiting for the next drama or whatever that was. But there was very little happy in there. The only real happiness that I actually saw was with my children.
And there's actually like a list of movies that we talk about as well. So, you know, like there's movies you can watch that actually, because I don't think it's so much like, it's not about like the happy ever after ending, but what she was referring to, and we talk about a lot to me, is like movies that like inspire you, that kind of wake up the
Totally.
magic in you, you know. And sometimes like we'll text each other and be like, what are you watching? You know, like Maleficent is something that's really, for me, it's like really magical, like, and because they acknowledge like the fairies and the elves and all these like spirits of the earth that are actually used to be part of our, are still here, but we don't really see them anymore. We don't acknowledge them. And other movies like, I mean, Avatar doesn't have a massive, I don't think Avatar's ending is that happy, but it's one of those movies that will kind of like wake up, like you wake you up, like,
Yeah.
and the X-Men movies are more than like, and start kind of waking up like who you really are.
Well, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for me was a huge one. I mean, from the time that I was like, from when I remember, Willy Wonka was always the movie that I watched once a year. And I'd see them licking the wallpaper. I'd see the thing and the thousand pieces up over their head. And then at the end, they got to shoot through with the glass. And I was like, he got the whole chocolate factory, like, there's little Charlie, like, and he's like living with his nanas and grandas. And I'm like, he
Yeah,
got the chocolate factory. And it's still, it's one of the movies that I love to watch.
it's a
I
good one.
love to watch it. Um, so yeah, and then me and you met, and then we met, like, through
Well,
Access, and go on.
Well, didn't you were going to Lorna Jean for a while, and she was running
Yeah.
Reiki on you. She also started doing access bars on you, and that also started. You were going for weekly sessions, right? And you didn't know
Yeah.
what she was doing on you.
No, but it was so funny because I remember when I went to her, I was going to her, I actually went in first, right? Because this is so funny. So I had my very first Reiki session. It was in 1998. right? And that was my very first Reiki session. It was a lady that I worked with in a job. Mary Claire is her name. And it was the night before that I was had my engagement party, right? And she said to me, "Oh, I'd love to gift you," she said, "a session of Reiki." She said, "You know, as a gift for you." And I was like, "Okay." So she came to my house. I lay on the bed, and she ran Reiki, like she'd done Reiki on my body, and I knew this energy. I knew it, and I was like, "Oh, this is lovely," you know. So then fast forward, and then Lorna Jean, when I started having sessions with her, I kind of went in there kind of like a little bit like light first, and I asked for reflexology. So I had that for about 3 weeks. And then she was like, "Oh, would you like to try some Reiki?" And I was like, "Okay." And then but knowing inside that I was excited about it,
Yeah.
you know, but I kind of didn't let on in case it was too weird or anything. And then she had trained in Access Bars literally like from the time that I started going to her within a few weeks. And then I had my first bar session, and that was very, very different to anything I'd ever had.
And what was it like? Did the anxiety change? Like,
Totally. I remember coming out of my first session, and I drove down to the town, and I went to the chipper and I got a bag of chips, and I sat in the car, right? And I sat in the car, and it was like that place. And I remember that place where I was sitting in the car, the chips were here, and I was on my own in the car, and there was nothing going on in my tummy, nothing going on in my head. And I was like, wow. And I remember this time, you know, and it was like so different for me. And that I remember she sent me a text during the week, and she was like, how are things? Like, how are you doing? And I was like, yeah, great. I said it's a bit weird. And she was like, in what way? And I said, I'm not thinking.
wow.
And that was the beginning of the not thinking,
I love
you
it.
know. Oh, I'm like, even to think about it, I'm like, and I'm thinking about it, but it's like it wasn't like, you know, those tumbling thoughts, you know, like up and down my
Non-stop.
brain, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you
You know,
know.
and one of the things they, we talk about and in some access classes is that like anxiety, and a lot of mental illness, and I talk a lot about mental illness on this show. It's something, that I talk openly about, that I've been through myself. And then it's also something I really care about, like when I see people who are like, like with addiction or anxiety or mental illness, like and I know that there's a different possibility for them. I so want to just give them all these tools and be like, no, look, you can really change this. Because with anxiety, there's so much and first off, there's so much judgment on it, and there's so much wrongness, So like you're told, oh, you need to, or like if you go to a doctor, they'll put you on antidepressants, which doesn't really change it. It just kind of numbs your body. So it's not really a great, like it might be fine for short term, but long term, that doesn't really assist you that much. And one of the things we talk about in Access is like, what's wrong with you is actually what's strong about you. And the thing about anxiety and any mental illness is that it's an overload of awareness. It's you're having a lot of awareness. And so the title of the show is Anxiety Overload or Awareness Overload, because it's like when like Sue talked about, like I talk about too, like it comes in, you have all this information, like you don't know it's information, you don't know it's you picking up on energies, but it's all this stuff in your world, in your body. It's this heart palpitating, like head racing, but nobody actually ever asked you like, oh, what are you aware of? Like, is it yours? What are you picking up on? And so those even just simple questions, when you start to like ask them, you start to acknowledge, actually, maybe I'm not fucked up. Like maybe there's actually nothing wrong with me. Maybe I'm just really aware.
I love this. I love what you're saying, because when somebody said to me about anxiety, and I think it was Rachel O'Brien actually said it to me, and she had said to me, anxiety, what if you were to look at that as awareness? And even when she said that, I was like, oh, it started to neutralize that energy in my world, that heaviness, that, density in my world. It's like you know, when that energy, when you wake up and you have that thing in your tummy, that pit in your stomach, the first thing that I would have went to was, oh no, I have anxiety again.
Yeah.
Right. So now if you notice the way I would have said that, and I said this for many, many years. So there is no question in that, right? And if anybody on here, like, if somebody would have said this to me 15, 10 years ago, whatever, there's no question that I would have been like, what do you mean there's no question in that? So it's really like, for me, I'm trying to look for something that I could actually use as a, whatever those things are called, that people do these things to compare it to something simple. It's like every, okay, how would I even do it? So it's like when you eat something, right? The food is never exactly the same that you eat. It's never exactly the same potato. It's never exactly the same carrot. It's never exactly the same meat, because they all come from different places, right? And different times. So when you literally catch a label and put it on something, when you get that feeling or sensation in your body and you go, this is aware, oh, this is like anxiety again, right? Then you are lumped with that the whole day. Every time that thing comes up in your tummy, here's the anxiety again. Every time the heart palpitation, here's the anxiety again. And what I began to change when Rachel had said that to me, and me and you working like all the time together with this, like we were living practically side by side, right? And I remember like actually using the question of, actually, what am I aware of? What am I aware of? And anytime I ask the question, it will get lighter. Like maybe that much later, sometimes that much later. And I started to use that question and then maybe bring in another question. And the next question maybe could have been like, is this mine? Am I aware of something, you know, on the earth? Like, and 9 times out of 10, when I would go to question like that, within a very short period of time, some information would come in from the outside that would be compatible or align with that energy of the question that I asked. And I go, oh, wow, that's what I was aware of. And then it would dissipate. And it would dissipate more and more and more. So the moment I started to acknowledge, number one, I'm aware of something, it would change. Then I would acknowledge, maybe this is not mine, it would change again. So I kept, I suppose for me, it took me a while to actually get into the practice of this, but I started using one question and that as a foundation, and then building question, you know, and
I
just
love
keep on
that.
asking. Yeah. And it was like, Amy, for me, like this was something that like didn't change overnight for me.
No, not for me either.
Yeah, totally. And if it ever showed up today, I have tools, questions. You know, I'll put my hands on my body, especially like here and around the chest area, and always around the lower tummy. And I'll stand. Sometimes I'll go out, take off my shoes, take off my socks, and sink my feet into the earth. And I'll ask, okay, body, what are we aware of here? And when somebody gave me that question before, I remember saying, I am not going to be talking to my body. There is no way I'm going to ever leave anyone see me doing that. Right? And now it just rolls off my tongue, because for me, there is nothing too weird out there for me. If it gives me ease, I will use it. I will choose it and I'll use it. If I get ease and I get lighter and I get more expansive and I'm having more joy and I get happier, I'll use it.
Yeah, and I love that. You know, that analogy you went, like you went, you know, the question and then another question and another question, because it's like you, everyone's at different points in their life and with their, you know, with whatever you're dealing with. Everyone's at different points. Everyone who watches this show or listens to it, you're all at different places. But just even starting with that one question, like when you get the pit in your stomach or your heart starts palpitating or the racing mind comes in, just starting with, okay, what am I aware of? And you may need to ask it like 10, 20 times and
Yeah.
without having to figure it out. Because I used to be like, what am I aware of? And then I'd get mad because I didn't know, I couldn't figure out what I was aware of, you know, rather than just being like, okay, what am I aware of? And then And then maybe follow up with, is this mine, someone else, or something else? And sometimes you don't have to, like, you could just be like, okay, I'll return to sender everything that I'm aware of that I'm trying to take on from anyone else. And, you know, and then for me, the next part, Sue, is a lot of times is, what's my body asking for? Body,
Totally.
how can we change this? How can we move this? How can we have more ease? So for me, sometimes it's like, go to yoga, move it out. Hot yoga for me is like, I don't know, access bars and hot yoga and dance are like 3 of my go-tos. Like, I'm not sure how I would be so sane in this world without hot yoga and bars and movement. But that's one of my things. I know for you, Sue, it's like walking out in nature. You're like always in the forestry, in the back of Beyond's, the back arse of nowhere.
Back arse of nowhere.
like finding
places. And it's so interesting because like I'll walk and walk and walk, and it's like, you know, when I'm around the trees or the ocean, it's like that's so much space for me that my body gets so much space. Like there is nothing, as somebody said to me one day, the trees are not judging you. Like they're not saying, oh, here's Sue, God's sake, let's hide, right? No, they're like, oh, there she is, come on, right? And like, so this is something that I really chose to get a lot of information on around projections, judgments, and, you know, expectations. When I go to the forest, there is no projections there. There is no expectation of me or I have of the forest. And there is no judgment of the forest and the forest of me, right? So this is where I get to be so much space. And I asked to have that space everywhere, right? Even if the trees weren't there, for me to have it everywhere. Now, it just so happens I live in a place that has like trees all around the back. And one of the tools that I use, especially if there's a whole load of thoughts coming up, or if there's something that I have deadlines for, or, you know, and like if I'm trying to like push them aside or avoiding them, I'll just like, if I'm aware of a projection, because like somebody can speak a projection to you, but also energetically somebody can put a projection into your world, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a very heightened awareness around projections. I'll know. Now, I don't go digging for who it is or what are they saying, but I'll be aware that it's in my world. And it's like a thump, boom, 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 right? So what I actually have chosen to use is a tool, and it's from Access Consciousness, and it's interesting point of view, right? So it's interesting point of view. I have the point of view that there's a projection in my world, or somebody is expecting something from me, or someone's judging me, right? And then it's interesting point of view. I have the point of view, interesting point of view. They have the point of view, right? And I'll use it, and it doesn't make sense, right? But I don't either. So it works for me, because I remember as a kid, like being told so many times, if I ever said, you know, like a way, kind of like a magical thing, and it was like, that's a load of nonsense. Well, you know what? I'm pretty nonsensical. Like for me, I try not to make sense, because we change in every moment. So when I try and make sense, or when I'm trying to figure something out, that's when all of that heaviness will come in for me. So I will use these tools, even though they don't make sense, but they actually give me so much more space.
So it's so funny, like none of these tools make sense. None of these questions make sense. But it's like, hello, if you're watching this show and you've tried to change anxiety from this reality version of either going to take medication or trying to meditate for 24 hours, you know, a week or something, and it's not changing, then the sensical way is not changing it. Then a good way to look at it may be a nonsensical way, you know, like. And this is one of the other like nonsensical tools that I use. It's called the crazy phrase. And if you take an Access Bars class, it's in the manual. But this tool really, like, oh my God, this I would like, I don't know. I think I would have been gone crazy only for this tool, because I worked in a really busy restaurant when I first moved to Florida, and I'd worked 5-6 shifts a week. and we'd work long hours, around a lot of people, like taking, just a lot of manic energies. And I'd come home from work, especially on a Saturday night, and I'd be so exhausted, like so ready for bed. And I'd shower, change, get into bed, and I'd be like getting ready, get into bed, and my head would start racing. And my head would go. And like, it was like I was still at the restaurant. I was still taking care of everyone. People were just running through my head, racing through my head still. While I lie in bed, it's 2 a.m. And all I want to do is sleep. And I'm like, what? And so I use this tool. It's called, you just say it over your thoughts. Everything is the opposite of what appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what appears to be. Everything is the opposite of what appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what appears to be. Everything is the opposite of what appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what appears to be. And I would say that over and over and over. And sometimes I could say it for like 100 times, but I would fall asleep. At some stage, I'd be saying that, and my mind would empty out, and I'd fall asleep. And that's another like nonsensical tool,
Yeah.
People, what does it mean?
Make sense of it.
You can't make sense of it. That's why it works. You're trying to change something that's actually created from an insane point of view using something that's sane. So it doesn't work. So to change something that is created from an insane point of view, which anxiety, overwhelm, aware, like all this stuff is created from some unconscious place, you gotta also change it from this. That's like, you've got to use something that doesn't make sense to change it.
Because none of it makes sense. Absolutely. And that those tools, and I love the word neutralize, because that's exactly what those tools do. They neutralize that intensity. They neutralize those insane thoughts. Or as you just said, you'd come home from the restaurant, and how many of the conversations are still going on, right? Just because you physically left and the person is physically left. And thank you for saying this, because we were in a restaurant the other day and we were having lunch, me and my daughter, and like, I didn't realize that you had to walk up to order, right? So I was like, where's the waitress? Like, where's the waitress? But I actually, now I'm aware, talking to you, that I'm projecting into her world all of the time. Where are you? Come on, I'm waiting, right? Which is not fun. It's not fun for her, right? And it's not fun for me. So there's so many tools actually like that you've just highlighted. Even when I'm thinking of it, I'm like, there's another tool that you can use. You can actually like connect with her energy, and actually like gently
Low energy to her. Yeah.
Low energy to her gently, without even giving dirty looks or where are you? Like, come on, we're ready to order kind of a thing. Yeah. So thanks for that, because that there again is projection. And it's like, there's so many places in this world where there is projection, where there is expectation, and there is judgment. And when you talk about anxiety, this is something else that I became very aware of. When you get a feeling or a sensation in your body and you go and actually define it, then 9 times out of 10, what comes in afterwards is judging it. And when you judge something, it becomes denser and heavier, and then you get stuck in it because it's judgment, and then it's just a roller coaster of judgment, and then trying to figure it out. But you're trying to figure out a judgment that maybe actually nothing got to do with this. So it's like a whole kind of loop, over and over again, and it's all day until eventually you get burnt out and you fall asleep from it. Right? or you have like a bottle and a half of wine, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, and also to say that, like, I started to really get space from anxiety, and really from having like sessions of my bars run, using the tools. I also meditate most mornings. It's a 12-minute meditation, and I absolutely love it. There again, it's always communicating with my body when I wake up. Hey, body, what would be ease for you right now? If there is that little, pump in the heart, or that little thing in the tummy, it's like, okay, body, what can we actually choose here that will change this? And it's working with your body, not against it. Because if you have this anxiety and you call it anxiety, then how much do you actually try and run away from that feeling in your body and actually separate from your body? and not work with your body and collaborate with your body.
Communicate, commune with your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Like, because the minute you go into the judgment, like you judge it, you call it anxiety, you judge it, you judge you make you wrong, you go into how fucked up you are. The minute you're on the hamster wheel, it's turning. You have separated from your body. And now, like you said, you're actually fighting against your body rather than actually creating with it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, like, all that can happen in a nanosecond, like a split second, like 5 minutes, all that can happen. And in the next 5 minutes, you can change it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're willing to, and this, when I went visual on what you said there, when you're willing to actually ask a question, you're opening the doors to a possibility. When you actually conclude or judge it, it's like those doors are closed tight and you're inside behind those doors. And it's like that energy.
Yeah, and the questions, like the questions we give at the start, the questions maybe you can write them out in a post-it, stick them on your wall or stick them on your fridge, because it takes a bit of practice. And it's like muscle memory, you might need to ask the questions every day or a couple of times a day to get into that habit, because you've been in a habit of judging yourself. You've been in that program of there's something wrong with you for so long. Asking the question breaks through that program. And like you said, starts to open up a different possibility, but you've got to ask, and you're the only one that can ask. I can't ask for you, Sue. Sue can't ask for me. You've got to care enough about yourself that you're willing to ask a question that actually starts to open up the door to a different possibility. And that question we said at the start, who does this belong to? Is this mine? What am I aware of? Who am I aware of? Yes. And it could also be, whose body am I aware of? Am I aware of someone without a body? Because, that's a whole other conversation. We can get into entity awareness too, which we'll get into another week, on another show. But, there's so many energies you're aware of. And so one of the questions I put on the top of the title of this was, in the description was, what if this is, what's right about this that you're not getting? What's right about the anxiety that you're not getting? And what you had said, Sue, if you didn't call it anxiety, you didn't label it anxiety, what could it be, right? And what's the gift in this? Because this is a capacity that you have.
Totally.
But everything that we judge in this reality is actually a capacity. So if you stop judging it and start looking at what if being that aware is actually a capacity?
Yeah.
And if you watch the X-Men movie,
a very good example. Yeah. Oh yes, the X-Men movies are amazing, and it shows you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know, Sue, I'll tell you this, and then you can. So we went to this, like, I was at this workshop. It was actually trauma-informed workshop, and it was all these kind of like spiritual kind of yogi people at it. And the girl who led the workshop, the class was massive, asked everyone in the room to like introduce themselves and say if they could have any superpower, what would it be? Do you know how many people said they would like to read people's minds as their superpower? I was like, wow, you're already all doing that.
Everyone is. Yeah. I love it. I love that. I love it. It's so amazing, because when you hit on the abilities, when you say capacity, and I call it an ability, right? And a capacity ability, it's like all similar. Similar, yeah. I had woken up and I had this thingy in my tummy, and I was like, okay, what are you aware of? Body, what's going on here? What are we aware of? What are we perceiving here? Right? And perceiving for me is always on the outside. Right? Because most people say, I feel, and feeling is always, in the inside. It's like I feel sad, I feel anxious. Whereas if you change it to what am I perceiving, it takes you from actually feeling that heaviness, that density, and owning it. And it actually brings you to a different possibility of, hey, what if I'm perceiving something out here? So I was laying in the bed anyway, and I was like, oh, here it is, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, okay, so what are we aware of? what are we perceiving here? You know, and within a very short space of time, I got a message from a client asking could she have a session that day because she was feeling super anxious and, you know, she really needs to get something off her chest. And I was like,
There you
okay,
go.
off your chest. Great. Thank you so much. So my ability there is that I could perceive that energy in her world. I could perceive it. And a lot of the times, people are perceiving energies in people's worlds. They're perceiving energies. And guys, this is not like just like your neighbor next door. This can go like to a radius of like hundreds of thousand
8,000.
miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've got like, you know, I would say that when I was, you know, like very heightened like anxiety all of the time and super like heightened awareness, like chances are that you can go beyond those 800,000 miles. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I was able to describe one time, you know, me and my sister, we were having this like banter, and she was on the train in New York, and she messaged me. My message alarm on my phone was a train, so it went choo choo, right? I messaged her back and I said, "Are you on the train?" She said yes, and I said, "Are you wearing a blue top?" She said, "Yeah." Now I couldn't see her, but this was just something for fun that we were doing. So, what if that what you have thought or maybe defined is a disability is actually an ability that you have? What if what you've defined as a wrongness is actually your strongness? And what if asking a question could change this? If you've got this going on for 20 odd, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, would you be willing to try something nonsensical, nonsense, right? And what if that worked?
Yeah.
I would
So
totally try it.
well, yeah, Albert Einstein said, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So if you want a different result, you got to choose something you've never chosen before. So you may have to
Yeah,
do something that's outside of the realm of normal reality, you know,
yeah,
the normal
absolutely.
box. If you're watching this show, you probably don't fit into a normal box. You wouldn't be able to
No,
listen to it otherwise.
where is the box, by the way?
What?
Where's the box? I never saw it. I don't think it exists. I think somebody just said there's a box, and then everybody went, okay, I'm supposed to fit into this box. But actually, did anyone ever get in that box? Or did anyone actually have a picture of it? Could you please post it to us?
We missed that one. We missed that
I
lesson in
missed the
school.
box.
Well, Sue, this was really fun. We're at
Oh,
like
yeah.
48 minutes. I always go over time when I have Irish people on my show.
We milk it. We totally milk it.
We're like, oh, we don't like to show up and talk. We're Irish, but yet when we show up and talk, we'll talk nonstop.
Yeah.
My
love
mother
it.
hit the hour mark last week. I was like, oh my God.
I love it.
So this was amazing. Thank you so much. If anybody's watching this show, Sue Cotter is in Cork, Ireland. How can they find you, Sue?
I'm on Facebook under Sue Cotter. I'm also on Instagram, nurture.sue. I'm on the Access Consciousness website. Yeah. You can Google me. You'll find me in Google. Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Well, if you Google me, there's also a porn star with the same name as me. So
Yeah, Amy, come on now. Be honest here. Like,
not me. I'm like, she made up her name.
it's not me. Like,
She's got red hair.
that's your real.
Like, that's my real name. She made up the name because it sounds like a good name for a porn star,
It
apparently.
is a great name.
So this was fun. Thanks for being on, Sue. I'll get you on again. Another week. We have lots of different topics we like to talk about. Maybe I'll get you on. We talk about food.
Yes, I would love to talk about food. I love food.
So, thanks for watching, everyone. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.